Thanks so much for everybody for joining, and let's get the party started.
Perfect.
Whoops.
Well, first off, let's just do some. Oh, you're good?
Sorry.
Okay, perfect.
Fixing
Yeah, so
it.
let's just do some quick introductions, and then we're going to get into a few poll questions, and then we're going to get into the meat of what we're all here to talk about. So, hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Wong. I'm the VP of RevOps at Rattle. I see people in the chat talking about where they're from. So, Sarah and I have done somewhat of a swap here. So, I'm from San Francisco, but I live in London. And I've been in the RevOps space for roughly 10 years. Before that, I was at Deloitte for 6 years. Taft, do you want to give a quick introduction before we get into the poll questions?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everybody. I'm Taft Love. I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm the founder of Iceberg RevOps, an agency, and I also run commercial operations for the sales and account management program at Dropbox.
Love it. Sarah, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I'm from Ireland, but living in Denver right now. I was in San Jose prior to that. I'm VP of RevOps at Weights and Biases.
And
Awesome.
I'm Kevin Hurley. I'm calling in from Carmel, Indiana today. Head of RevOps at a company called Terminus. Yeah, that's me.
Awesome. We've got a great panel here. And David, do you want to put up the first poll question really quickly? Awesome. So this first poll question, do you have hard KPIs you are measured on? And I assume most people here are in RevOps, but if you're not, that's okay. You can answer this as well.
We have a question by Hard. What do you mean?
The way that I think about that is concrete, measurable KPIs, not difficult. That's not how I would have defined that question.
So instead of improve efficiency, it's maybe reduce time to create opportunity by 50%. Would that?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Awesome. David, do we have those poll results? Ooh, interesting. We'll dive into some of these as we go through the panel, but that was more yes than I expected personally. So awesome. It looks like the panel agrees with me. So let's go with the second panel question, or yeah, real quick, David, poll question, not panel.
Ooh,
How important? So how important is it to have concrete, definable, measurable KPIs for RevOps? Yeah, I'm really curious about this one. Right there with you, Kevin.
I bet 2/3 of people will say somewhat important.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
I wish we could poll that group specifically.
It's all right. If you click the third one, yeah, that's probably not important. But we'll go with somewhat important, but that's interesting. Very important, 56%. Cool. I think we've got one more poll question before we get into some of the part of our conversation here. And this one's more just to help us understand what the scope of RevOps is, because it's fairly new, but not at the same time. And so clicking as many as it applies to you and your org around what's your current scope in RevOps.
You know what I don't see here is enablement, whether or not enablement should come from RevOps or a separate group entirely.
Oof, we missed that one. That's a really good shout. Should have put that in that.
It's a pretty good debate, I think.
That one's be interesting as well. All right. I think that gave everyone enough time to click around. Let's see what those results were. It's like, let's see. I'll be honest, this one's hard to read for me. Um,
I was waiting to
We're
see how you'd
really,
answer this. I think.
really low on the customer success side and a bit on the marketing side. It's kind of surprising. It looks like we're still sales ops 2.0.
I think so. Sales 84%. Well, awesome. Well, thanks everybody for participating there. We've got everyone involved. I'm going to kick it off with our first question here for the panel. Can you start by defining RevOps and its role within your respective organizations? And then it wouldn't be fair for us to ask the every person here the question, but how are you measured? Do you have hard KPIs? And so I'll go to Taff first if you want to answer that question.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with just the definition of RevOps. I think you have to zoom way out and keep in mind that RevOps morphs as companies grow and as maturity changes. Super early on, RevOps is Sales Ops 2.0, and that's totally fine for a brand new startup. And then over time, you get to a place like at Dropbox where we start to sort of unbundle the various operational components, and RevOps is a piece of that. But I'm not on the RevOps team at Dropbox. It is almost a place where systems interacts with all of the other elements of operations. And so a lot of the definition of RevOps depends on the company you're at, but I would say at the highest level, the way I explain it to people is it is an operations function that does not report into any of its client orgs. That's like the most simple way to put it. And then you got to go a layer deeper and learn about the company itself to understand what it means to each company in my mind.
I love
Awesome.
that.
Yeah,
I love the definition there. Like a good poll question may have been, who do you report into? You know, like wondering how many are in the CRO or CFO or something like that.
And I'll do a real quick, I'll take a quick second to address what Mitch and Alyssa just asked. I would say not reporting into your client orgs means, let's say your RevOps team is helping, their clients are sales and marketing and finance at a small to mid-sized startup. So you're doing sales ops, you're doing marketing ops, you're doing sales, finance, and working with those three teams. They're your clients. You are helping them advance their divisions. You're not reporting into any of those. So it is not RevOps, in my opinion, if you're reporting into sales, because they are also a client. And so that's my definition. You have to report somewhere like COO, CEO, someone who is above that bi or trifurcation between the various clients you serve.
Yeah, and the one thing that I would add is I think that'll help create the right reporting structure, but it'll still work no matter who you report to. And I think that's something important to note here as well, is that I think communication and alignment doesn't have to be confined to who you report to, but it makes it easier at times. And I think that's what Taft is saying, is that even if you're at an organization that doesn't have that exact pure reporting structure, communication and making sure that you get aligned is even more important, and making sure that you use data in an unbiased way. And I think that's part of what Taft might have been alluding to a little bit as well. Cool. Sarah, any other thoughts or comments just around, the RevOps org and scope?
Yeah, so similar to Tab, like I think RevOps is like a really situational role. So it depends on like what series and stage your company's at. Who you report to is huge. So we actually report to our CRO. So like everything we do, all our OKRs are all aligned to those priorities. And like we think about our RevOps team, think about like we're GM of that business. So like we're managing the coverage, we're managing the headcount, profitability, which in our world is efficiency. We're tracking KPIs. We're also responsible somewhat for the culture, through comp plans, like, what is the culture you're trying to drive across the sales, or to SCO, through any kind of spiffs we're doing. So I think like we really own it, like it's our business. In terms of KPIs, so I have hard KPIs. So I'm on a comp plan as well. So I measured on net ARR to the business and cash burn, which is interesting. My team, though, are not on that same plan. My team are all measured on OKRs, and each of our OKRs will be highly metrics driven, and everybody's a driver of at least one per quarter. And that's how we track those. Yeah.
Ooh, the cash burn one is really interesting.
I know.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got a variable component to my comp plan as well, and I'm against the net ARR number as well, Sarah. But the cash burn one is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Kevin,
It's
any
definitely
last
another
thoughts on
layer.
this question?
Yeah, so I do really think about the idea that Taff mentioned about rolling up to somebody that isn't necessarily one of your stakeholder groups is really interesting. I roll up to the CFO here at Terminus, and I think one of the core functions that I've always thought about with RevOps is to kind of tear down those silos and be as collaborative and cross-functional as you can be. And in a sense, I think rolling to somebody that's a little bit more, let's say, agnostic, can really help with that, because finance, kind of supports the whole org, RevOps supports the whole org. I think that's really important. And in terms of metrics, I do also have a variable comp, and there's a couple of components are, driven by retention and retention metrics like GRR, NRR. But we do also have a variable comp piece that is driven by net new ARR and more like sales driven metrics. And then much like Sarah, like my team is, they half their comp is based on OKRs and OKR performance, but half is also directly aligned to my variable pay on the GRR and net new. So I think I've always liked having that alignment, bottom up. I think it's really important. Yeah, so that's kind of how we're measured, or at least that's how we're comped on the variable side.
Love it. Super interesting. Let's move on to our next question. And I'll come to you, Sarah, on this one. What's your North Star KPI that gives you the best pulse of RevOps performance? And this is a little bit similar to the first question. And then the second part to this question is, what levers can you pull to influence it?
Yeah, so like our North Star KPI is really AE productivity. Like we also look at GRR on our CS side and other kind of retention metrics, but AE productivity is really the North Star that we're always chasing. So like if we can so we're looking at like quota over OTE, and we're not pure PLG where we were today. So we're not quite at 5x yet, but that's what we're striving for. And then I think like to do that, like you've so many levers, like you can go like increase average deal size. Okay, so how do you do that? Like you can do better customer segmentation, better market segmentation. You can do like sales plays around cross sells. You can like look at your approval matrix and like actually start to like turn down what you're letting approved and like change the discounting structure you have. So within even just deal size, you have a ton of influence. You can look at the number of ops, like you can like really start to push hard on pipeline, more opportunities, more throughput. Sales cycle time is the other one that we will be really keen on. Like, how do you give reps back even just 30 minutes in a week? So can you automate like fields that are needing to be populated in Salesforce? And can you like send them, like this where you use Rattle like all the time? Like, can you quickly get information to them, be like, hey, your deals are stuck in this stage. Like, why don't you move them on? So how are you constantly looking for ways to drive efficiency and effectiveness? And then the last one is win rate. So this is where we really go back to like segmentation. Like, are you making sure that your reps are focused on the right deals in the right segments so that they can win most effectively? And really across those four, we look at sales velocity, and we're always trying to iterate and tweak on each one of those to like drive productivity.
Yeah, I love the sales velocity equation. It's like it cuts through all the noise and it captures four of the most important KPIs.
Yeah. Quick tip though, don't actually use the velocity metric. That's the one that like blows all our sales leaders' minds. They're like, I don't understand. What does that mean? Like $3,000. So I'm always just like, okay, ignore the actual velocity output. Just look at the piece parts and like optimize every single one of those as best we can. And then you'll drive individual AE productivity to the roof. So that's what we do.
That's a hot tip right there. Because yes, the velocity number is very hard to understand. Yeah, totally. Kevin, anything that you'd like to add there around North Star KPI? Yeah,
it's interesting with my team because we are comprised of marketing, sales, and CS ops, but also business intelligence and enablement. So we all kind of have various things that we are focused on as kind of those individual people on our team. But I've been thinking a lot lately about the North Star metric being around lifetime value, because I think that lifetime value, initially I thought about it a lot as a customer centric metric, because they renew, they increase, they cross sell, upsell throughout the life cycle, right? but I've also been thinking about it a lot. Sales velocity, I love. But I've been thinking a lot lately too, that if we're doing the right segmentation, if we're approaching the right accounts and targeting the right accounts and really maximizing our efforts in the sales process, you should also start with kind of better revenue. And if you start there, then lifetime value also has a better platform to increase on over time. So it's not a hard metric that I'm measured on, but it's something that I've been keeping a closer eye on lately. And I think it kind of helps encapsulate all the way from, sales and marketing efforts all the way through customer success and retention efforts.
I love that. The lifetime value is super interesting. You kind of get there with net new ARR because you've got expansion and GR, but you're not there fully. So I kind of like that, the lifetime value of a customer. That's pretty unique. Perfect. Well, Taff, did you want to add anything? Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
I assumed you were coming to me there. I was just prepped with what we care about, and we're a little different in that net new ARR is the thing we care about right now. It's our North Star, and I really like simple. And I think all three of us have something that's like fairly simple and easy to understand and measure. And yeah, ours is new business because lifetime value isn't a problem for us. And so for us, it's you gotta fill top of funnel.
Yeah. And what you said, Taff, is so important for everyone out there that didn't catch it. Simple is extremely important. And I'm getting the head nods from the entire panel. And it's exactly why Sarah brought up, don't talk about sales velocity, because it's not simple for people to understand. And that's okay, right? Awesome. Let's go on to our next question. Oh, go ahead.
I think Gavin had a question in the chat, just to expand a little bit further on what that is. So like really what sales velocity should measure is the amount of pipeline or the amount of dollar value that each op is representing. So like if they have 30 ops, each one of them is representing like $3,000 an hour. That actual metric itself bamboozles people because they're like, I don't get that. How does it work? But it's the piece parts of that formula that are really important. So there's really just four. It's like sales cycle time, deal size, number of opportunities, and win rate. And if you can track, and there's some really good like Tableau articles out there if you use Tableau, but if you can track that on an AE level, you can actually see where some people are strong, and some people might have a really great win rate, but not enough ops, and you can really start to improve individuals' productivity that way. But there's really good articles online as well. I'll try to send some after.
Love it. All right, Taft, coming to you on this next question. How are you optimizing for BDR efficiency, and what KPIs are you using to track them?
All right, so this is one, full disclosure, this is not coming from Dropbox. This is coming from Iceberg, the agency, and my time building BDR programs at PandaDoc and Smart Recruiters. We don't have a BDR program at Dropbox, but this is a corner of RevOps with which I'm intimately familiar. And so I think instead of going over everything, I'm going to talk about the one thing most people aren't thinking about that I think is interesting and important to pay attention to. So if you go to any conference out there full of BDRs, SDRs, you're going to hear conversations about open rates and response rates and all of the vanity input metrics that don't actually matter in a vacuum. And the things that I like to measure, and I'm talking about outbound here specifically, inbound is sort of its own beast. But when we're talking about outbound prospecting and rep efficiency and rep effectiveness, I care about really two things. How many companies have they started prospecting? And you need to very clearly define what that means over X period. And so for me, like at Smart Recruiters, we created the definition. You need to have reached out to at least 3 people in the company who align with certain titles. And you need to have made at least 3 attempts per person to contact them. And assuming you don't get lucky and the first person you call becomes an opportunity, that is the top of your funnel, the funnel above the opportunity. That's the top of your funnel. So 3 people, 3 activities, and now you are approaching that company. So how many companies have they started approaching? And by the way, like make your own definition, make it work for your business, but create a definition of approaching. And how many companies do they need to approach in order to get an opportunity? How much is that opportunity worth? And you're getting towards something like velocity for account executives, but this is sort of measuring the funnel above the funnel. I call it the invisible funnel because everybody is talking about calls and emails and gifts, and sometimes the individuals who are receiving these. And those are all vanity metrics if we don't talk about how many companies these activities and people represent, because 2 reps who have the exact same day, measured by the way everyone measures it, they've reached out to 50 people each and made 2 calls per person, and that's 100 activities and 50 people. If you're selling into the Fortune 100, that might be 1 company you just approached. If you work at Yelp, that might be 50 companies you just approached. And so both of those reps getting 1 opportunity, those are wildly different days. But using the way we think about ops or think about SDR ops or BDR ops today at most companies, you would never know the difference. And so that's what I like focusing on, is how many companies do you have to approach to get a meeting, and how many meetings do you need to get to reach your goal. And now we can talk about like an efficiency and effectiveness metric that really matters. Like, how many companies do you need to target this month, quarter, or whatever to hit your goal? So anyway, long explanation of something that's like out of the box for most companies.
Oh, I think that's super insightful, and I think you can easily get in the trap of just tracking activities, to your point, Taft, and not understanding that exact output of what you expect to get from that, and then you kind of wake up and you realize you only got 1 meeting, and you're kind of trying to unwind why, and it's probably because you had the wrong starting point around the expectations around those activities.
Even if you measure companies, if you don't define what it means to approach a company, you're still not really getting a clear picture, because 1 rep goes super shallow into a bunch of accounts and is not effective at all. And then another rep goes really deep into a small number of accounts and, has a 20% conversion rate to meetings. But if you're looking at if you don't pay attention to depth and have a definition of entering your funnel, like, over time, you're not going to know why 1 rep is successful and the other isn't, if you're not looking at like depth of penetration into accounts, things like that. So it's a more holistic way to look at your world of BDR effectiveness and efficiency.
Makes complete sense. I think we've got another poll question for the folks here. So, David, there we go. What is your primary objective as a RevOps leader? Business efficiency, revenue generation, team execution, functional technology. I want to select all, but I can't.
I would call out only one of these is like a hard number that you can measure without having to aggregate a bunch of other measures to create a view into like business efficiency or team execution. That's not a critique of any of the other ones, but something that immediately catches my eye. One of these, you can pull a report in Salesforce and answer the question.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about how 3 of these are influential to one, right? Like, if you measure one of them, then you're really measuring the other 3 as inputs to that one. That's what I was thinking anyway.
Luckily, there's no correct answer. So here's the results. Looks like the top 2 are business efficiency and revenue generation. So I guess we can say efficiently growing your revenue is a primary objective of RevOps, which I would say is very true, actually. And do what Kevin and Taff were saying, you can't really do those 2 without the 2 other items that we had on there. So
the big job of RevOps here is to define each of these very thoughtfully, because without great definitions, all discussion of team execution is meaningless.
Completely. All right, we're going to go on to our next question. I'm coming over to you, Kevin. How do you quantify the impact of RevOps on customer retention and lifetime value? And I guess we know you like the LTV as well. And what KPIs do you use for this purpose?
Yeah, so for us, I think that quantifying the impact on CS and customer retention, it's almost like the poll question we just had, that lifetime value or NRR, GRR, pick your North Star metric in the CS world. It really is one data point that is measuring the inputs of several data points, right? So if you're going to improve GRR, or just standard retention rate, you're going to want to look at things like engagement over time, which personas are you engaged with? I like NPS a lot. So are we measuring NPS and putting into practice very specific practices that are going to help improve NPS, as that's a early leading indicator of, you know, likelihood to renew, right? And at the end of the day, I don't know about everybody that's here, but you know, I'm in SaaS. I think a lot of people here are probably in SaaS, and your real growth engine for your business and your ability to kind of stay in business really relies on your ability to retain customers. So for me, in the CS world, retention is absolutely pivotal. And then to me, I break that down. And so I've been at organizations actually where their North Star is NPS, because to them, it's if we have really, really great NPS and we're improving that over time, the natural result of that is, you know, better renewal cycles, better renewal outputs and performance. So I think, to me, I don't like to narrow it down to just one thing. I like to look at almost like the poll question. Revenue generation is critically important, but how do we impact that using the various inputs?
And I think we're calling out something that's difficult in the RevOps space, right? Is how do you simplify something that's really not that simple? You know, having a North Star metric is great, but then usually you need to dig down into that's maybe usually a lagging indicator, right? And then you're going to break it down into leading indicators. And even those you maybe can't even manage to. And now you're going to talk about specific activities that Taff was mentioning on the sales development side of the house. So that's really fascinating. Are there any other metrics specifically, Kevin, that you find really interesting when you're thinking about retention other than NPS? I know that's something that you called out that was top of the mind for you.
So there's actually two that I've recently dug into that I've really enjoyed digging. You know, I'm a data nerd. I like to dig into these things and I find it enjoyable. One thing that I recently dug into that I hadn't considered previously was engagement metrics. So who are we engaging with? And what does that cadence look like throughout the lifetime of that customer? So obviously looking at kind of 1 year, 2 year, 3 year cycles, depending on what you guys are selling most often. But actually looking at, so we have different engagement models based on kind of your segmentation of customer. So if you're in, you know, engagement model 2, are you following through? Are you having your bi-weekly meetings? Are you having your 90-day SBRs? Are you having your renewal conversations 90 or 120 days ahead of time? So are you actually having these engagements, and are you engaging with the right people? And through the analysis that we did, we saw there's a very strong correlation between, you know, it's not just more engagement, but it's the quality of engagement, the cadence of the engagement, and then who we're engaging with at those organizations. So you do know, like the breadth and depth conversation that Taft was saying, it's not how often, but also who. And then are you engaging with multiple people at the same organization? Because that makes you sticky, right? So those are things that I recently dug into that have been a lot of fun to dig into, but also really insightful.
The other metric that we use around like LTV or retention is usage and adoption. So like depending on your seat model, whatever, like right now we're a seats-based pricing model. So we're looking at like what is the utilization or adoption of seats, like trying to make sure you're at like that 75, 80% of all the seats that are allocated. And that usage is high. So like there's been at least one login over X, name your usage metric. Like it's always going to be political, whatever it gets to. But I think that's a really important one. So then we can kind of anticipate like where we're going to see likely churn or contractions because they're not using the seats. But it's the same on like a usage-based model. You just do the same thing.
Yeah, I love that. I heard two things there. Kevin, you were talking more from internally, what do we do, which is very, very important. How are we engaging with the customer? But the other way to do it is to measure what does good look like from a data perspective, product usage, if usage is data or if it's seats, what does that look like? But digging even a few steps lower than that, right? Because everyone at their companies right now are probably thinking, oh, that customer is safe, right? But are they really, right? And can you use a data-driven model to help you understand that, hey, there's some risk here? Maybe not that they're gonna churn or contract, but really you're trying to identify risk that then your engagement model helps you stave off
Yes.
and saves that customer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it almost reminds me of, I don't work here, but the Gainsight has a really interesting framework that they use called the DEAR framework, DEAR. And to Sarah's point, that first, the D is deployment. So out of licenses, how many are deployed, how many are being used? E is engagement, A is adoption, and R is, are you providing ROI? Can you measure that ROI? So I think that framework is also pretty powerful and again, simplifies, what you're measuring and what you're measuring against.
I'm going to go off script for a second because you said something really interesting, Kevin. I'm assuming the panel here is buying tools or justifying tools right now. I'm curious, when you're purchasing tools or renewing a tool internally, are you having to provide ROI type metrics to whoever is the decision maker?
I'll step in here and start sometimes, but I push back really hard on those discussions because in my experience, two things are true. All ROI calculations are fugazi. You're just plugging things into a model until the numbers work, so you can pass it up to a guy or gal who looks at it and says like, oh yeah, this seems good, and nobody's actually scrutinizing those numbers. And the second is nobody ever in the history of ever has come back after a year and said like, did the ROI calculation you projected last year actually work out? It's a totally bullshit exercise that we do to make people feel safe. I think there are a lot of things that you can invest in based on common sense and the goals of the org and making a strong business case. I do believe in strong business cases. Instead of talking about like making up numbers to decide what this might bring in, I would much rather have a thoughtful, difficult discussion about exactly how we're going to use this, exactly what requirements does it fill, are these the right requirements for our business case? That's a much better use of the time and effort, in my opinion.
On my side, like our CFO is smart, so she put me on a cash burn metric, so I don't have to go to anybody else. It's all me. I'm just like, so I'll challenge all my vendors because I also I have a pool of dollars and I don't want to go ask for more. So like if I have a renewal coming up, I'm like, can I shave like 15-20% on this to go buy something else? Like I'll do that. So like I'm always scrutinizing the utilization and like I'm pretty tight with seats just so I can optimize my budget. It's not that I'm going to keep it as back pocket, but I love spending our company's money on new tools and things for our sales team. So I'll optimize it where I can.
Yeah, to me, a lot of this comes down to like process documentation and almost like customer journey work as well, where if you do that and you do it really effectively, friction points will come to the surface and gaps will come to the surface as well, right? So one thing we talk about is business efficiency. It's kind of difficult to measure and kind of difficult to prove. However, if you can show that during our sales process, X, Y, and Z are big friction points. I think they're slowing us down. I think they're hurting morale, whatever it is. And you can bring a tool to the table and say, this specifically addresses this. And to Taft's point, like these are the requirements that it fulfills. I think that makes a really good case. But if you don't have a strong sense of what it is that it does, what gaps it fills or friction it relieves, I think it becomes very difficult to have that strong business case conversation.
We have a couple questions I'm going to jump in with because they're super relevant and I'm excited to hear your response. So first one is, how do you justify NPS as a RevOps metric? NPS is owned by customer support. And very similarly, how do you delineate RevOps impact on these top line KPIs versus the go-to-market team impact, what they're lifting versus RevOps is lifting?
Ooh. Can I take an early crack at this? And I don't think I'm the right guy to answer all these, but RevOps owning NPS, I think, is really important. And I think RevOps should co-own NPS if you're a SaaS product with your product team or whoever is responsible for like in-product interactions. And same is true if you're a landscaping company that has a RevOps team, then I think RevOps should share it with the delivery team. But I think the future of RevOps is going to be increasingly buyer experience focused and workflow focused. It is for so long been tool and silo focused. And I think we're finally making a shift to RevOps being in charge of the experience of buying and renewing and interacting with your sales and marketing and account teams. So I think NPS is absolutely tied to what RevOps does if RevOps is doing what they should be.
I can take a stab at the second question. And I don't have a great answer, but like we really don't bifurcate like what go-to-market are accomplishing versus what RevOps are accomplishing. I think like part of the beauty of RevOps is like we're always kind of the man behind the curtain. We're always that kind of foundational team like pushing the rest of the go-to-market org forward. So like as long as I can continue to drive up quotas and see better productivity, like I feel good about the work that our team is doing without a need to have our own KPIs that are differentiated from the rest of the work.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm cheating a little bit on both of these because CS Ops does sit on my team, right? So in order for us to improve operations or to improve NPS, for example, sure, like the execution is on another team. And I see the second part of that question is how do we get credit for metrics that another department wholly owns? Their job, I think, is execution and what people are really good at, you know, bringing their experience, their expertise to these conversations and like Taff said, having great experiences, right? It's actually why I like the idea of moving from customer success to customer experiences as a department. But also go-to-market is also on my team as well. It's technically my title is the head of go-to-market revenue operations. So it's kind of interesting that I'm cheating a little bit on both of those, but yeah, I think that's all I had to say there.
And look, I'll just add one more point here. And I think about the RevOps function as your customers are all of your internal stakeholders, right? And ultimately, those internal stakeholders, especially the ICs, are the ones that are talking to your prospects and customers. So every experience that you make that's really beneficial for them flows through to how they show up and they talk to your prospects and customers, which goes into the lifetime value. It goes into actually closing deals faster. And so, you know, I find RevOps to be one of the coolest behind the scenes functions there is. I see it as a function that's kind of a puppet master. Don't tell all the CROs out there, but when you kind of orchestrate something behind the scenes and then you see it play out, I think that's the win more than anything. And then you know that that leads to more revenue. So that's kind of how I see it. That's not going to help anyone here because I always joke about RevOps as a function that measures everybody else but doesn't measure themselves. So kind of ironic. Okay. We have one more poll question, David, if we're ready for that one. Oh, it's so fast. What's your biggest blind spot today? Attribution, funnel efficiency, upsells and expansion, seller activity, or CRM process and upkeep?
The age-old attribution.
No, it's not so much a blind spot, it's just gnarly. It's so tough. We now have 5 models running and yeah.
It's just the wrong thing to focus on in a lot of cases.
I agree.
Such
It's
another session.
I could tell, Camilla, you're passionate on this topic.
Oh my God.
It's kind of like watching a soccer game and somebody scores. It's like, who gets the credit? The guy that shot, the assist, the pass that came from the midfielder, the fact that the goalie stopped the last shot and actually moved it up the field.
There's the problematic word again, though, is credit. That's
right.
That's the crux of everything, including shared KPIs, I would say.
I think there should have been a 6th one that's just yes.
I love it. Let's see what we have here. Ooh.
Wow.
Okay. Funnel efficiency. I'm digesting this. Attribution's up there. Fun. we will not dive into that because it sounds like we're going to run out of time quickly. Funnel efficiency. I think the word efficiency is front and center of every organization in 2023 for sure. I'm surprised by the seller activity being at the lowest here. But that's interesting.
It can be really challenging.
Very good. I am going to go to our last question, and it kind of got asked a little bit here as well. But how do you package insights to your sales leaders? And really the crux of this question is, how do you get a bigger seat at the table? Or how do you vie for more headcount and tools? And I feel like maybe this is maybe a long and difficult question to answer, but how do you package these insights to your sales leaders? And Kevin, maybe I'll start with you, and then we can see who else wants to jump in here.
Yeah, it's a really good thought-provoking question. You asked almost two things there. How does RevOps get a seat at the table? And then another is tools and headcount, right? So one's kind of budgety, one's kind of how do you get the seat at the table? And I don't see getting a seat at the table as reliant on the other one, right? So do I think I'll get a seat at the table if I'm running a team of 10 versus a team of 20, right? Or will I get a seat at the table because I have the best tools and technology, right? I think that getting a seat at the table requires a little bit of proving the value that you bring to the organization and that your team brings to the organization. So there is an aspect of what you said, that we measure everybody else, but we don't measure ourselves. I think that we need to change that. I think it's high time that go-to-market and revenue operations align on what those KPIs are, and attribution's hard. So is the work that I'm doing with my sales ops manager impacting sales velocity? Absolutely. Am I going to take 100% credit? No, I don't think you need to, though. And so I think you earn your way to the strategic table by proving your way through tactical execution. And so, and I do look at those two things separately, but if you can tactically execute based on your strategy in RevOps, then you do earn that seat at the table. Because my stakeholders, for example, like my sales ops manager, their stakeholders are sales reps, sales ICs, and sales managers and directors. Mine is the CRO. And one thing that my CEO told me when I got this job is, you have to reframe the way that you think about your team now. Your team is your CRO, your CMO, your CCO, right? So if I become a good practitioner and a good support system for those organizations, then I think you start to earn that respect and that seat at the table as a strategic partner. And I think that's so important. And I also, this is maybe a little bit more like preachy, but I think it's important that you don't rush it. I think it's really important that you do prove yourself a little bit. You prove the value of your organization. You prove yourself able to execute through your team. And then now you can bring yourself to that table and earn your way in. I think that's really, really important. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
Yeah. I think it's important, like, that we are like not just problem solvers, but like that problem finders. So I think we see things all the time. We've such a good seat to see everything that's happening across the business. And like often your gut is telling you like, hey, that doesn't look right. Like, should my digital native team really be servicing that part of the segment, like part of the customer base? Like they're seeing pretty low employees, like we're not seeing much revenue. You see it all the time. So don't wait for your CRO to be like, hey, I think we need to fix segmentation. Like, be the problem finder. Like, go to your CRO and be like, hey, this is broken. Like, we got to fix it. And here's how I'm going to do it. Here's how I'm going to do it with. And then you have the seat at the table because you're bringing the problems to them. Don't wait to be asked, I think is my advice on that one.
I'm going to take a slightly different angle here, but it overlaps with what everybody else has said. Sarah and Kevin sort of touched on this, but I'm going to repackage it a bit. I think one thing we're often guilty of in ops generally, and RevOps is included, is struggling to shift from tactical to strategic. And specifically, like, you can identify an issue that has strategic implications, but then selling it up the chain can be really hard And so, I, as a sales leader, one of the things I talked about all the time with reps was telling stories, tell stories, tell stories. Don't talk to them about features. Tell a story about how this feature impacted someone. Don't, and in RevOps, I think it's really important to become a good storyteller, because you're often selling to an idea or an initiative to people who, it's not that they're not smart enough to understand, but they don't have your tactical sort of on the ground perspective. So how do you package this data that you've put together in a way that is easy to consume, accurate, and compelling to people who don't want to know the details behind it? They want to know the story. And so becoming a good storyteller is a really big part of getting a seat at the proverbial table.
Gosh, these are great answers, and I took some notes here. I think it's a combination of what everyone just said. You've got to prove yourself through execution. I think that's like any function in any org, and I think actually RevOps is really, really good at that. I think it's about being proactive, exactly what Sarah said, which is asking the right questions. That's huge, right? And you have to think about how you talk puts you on the type of level. If you're down at below trying to talk about things that are not up leveled, you're going to be seen as someone who's talking about things that are really minuscule. And I'm not just saying, that's just a fact. And I think what Taff was going to say, which is actually what I was thinking about as well, is storytelling. Just because we have all the data as a RevOps team doesn't mean that you don't have to package it up and tell that story. And that's so critical. There's a great book. It's I think it's by Daniel Pink. It's called To Sell as Human. And so we're all humans here. So part of our job is to help sell our ideas and sell the data that we're seeing that makes it compelling. Because at the end of the day, this is my personal opinion, what good is data and insight if you don't actually get behavior change, or if you don't do something differently in your organization, right? So being able to sell that data to help then influence and change an outcome, super powerful. So that's really, really exciting.
Yeah, what you just said reminds me a lot of a previous org I worked for. It was a mantra that was just drilled into our head, was that data is not the same as insights. Insight is not the same as action, and action is not the same as execution. And so you do have to be able to kind of work through almost like that funnel of thought process. And I think I'm going to think about for a long time what Sarah mentioned is I think of myself as a very strong problem solver. And to me, it's like that's like a badge of honor for me, right? But I think it's so much more important. And it reminds me about my last boss and kind of mentor mentioned to me that she always talked about asking the right questions and finding the right problems. And if you do get a seat at the table, don't talk the whole time. Let everybody talk, and then ask a compelling question that flips it on its head and that gets people thinking about something they weren't thinking about before. And that's one good way of making sure that you don't just earn yourself a seat, but you stay there too. I thought that was really good. I love that, Sarah.
Okay.
I see a question in the chat that might be interesting for this group. It's from Brittany. Curious about metrics that RevOps impacts on the CRM process and data quality and hygiene. We managed to go through 52 minutes here, not to say the word hygiene yet. At least maybe I didn't hear it, but I don't think I heard it yet. Are there metrics you can quantify impact on data quality, data capture, process adherence, hygiene? Taff, you're shaking your head. Or nodding your head, not shaking.
There's so this is something I learned when I was running operations at Smart Recruiters. We had a years-long discussion about data cleanliness, and it was a boil the ocean discussion. It was we need clean data, and I was much newer in ops than I am today, and fell into this pit of data cleanliness and spent a year just running into a wall, until finally I had somebody who had been there and done that help me understand a better way to approach it. And what I learned there was you have to define cleanliness. So you have to actually come up with a clear definition for what is clean data. And the next thing you have to do is decide which data needs to be clean to serve whatever initiatives you have going on. And until you do those two things, you're boiling the ocean. And then from there, I sort of figured out, okay, cleanliness is actually two things. It's accuracy and completeness. And data cleanliness is not worth having a discussion about unless it is reportable, unless you can filter your database using the definition of clean that you've come up with. And so that's the box I create to talk about data cleanliness before we go one step further. And so if you have KPIs that require clean data, then you need to very clearly define what is clean and what data impacts those KPIs so that you can have a meaningful conversation that actually moves the ball forward versus everyone being upset because the data is not clean, even though you've never defined what that means.
Yeah, we actually have an OKR. I feel like most of my OKRs, but we do have an OKR. We spend a lot of time thinking about how to define this for a team. But like what we're trying to do, we have a freemium model. So we have a ton of people that are on with like Gmail, QQ, whatever. So we like it's dirty. What we decided to do is like we're coming up with like a verified, like our own version of a verified blue check mark. So like verified, we're saying our 80% of all our high to medium scored accounts, so we do account scoring, have they been verified within the last 6 months? And what verified means is like, has it been verified by either Zoom Info or User Gems? We use both those tools. Has it been run through like some email block, like Never Bounce or one of those kind of products? So we know it's a true email address, or was it added by an AE in the last 6 months? And at least that way we're saying, okay, to the field, we feel pretty good that like 80% of your top accounts have verified contacts on them. And then everything else can be filtered out. But that's our like starting point, because this is just an incredibly hard problem to solve.
Yeah, I think the epiphany that I've had in the last 6 months or so was around what data matters. I think some organizations try to collect everything, every single thing, every field of the 100 fields on your opportunity record need filled out, I think some organizations treat that data as kind of an afterthought, and you don't realize what you need until 9 months down the road. You have to build some reports on your year-to-date performance. And you're like, man, I wish I had that data, right? So we've been very, very specific and digging in a lot, especially now that it's Q4 into, I've deleted, a few hundred fields off various objects in our Salesforce because it's just, I don't need that data. We don't need that data moving forward because they're not answering questions. They're not reportable. They're not helpful. So I just think that's so important. You got to start with business objectives, business goals, and everything else I think should be informed by that.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say as well is, can you answer the questions confidently? And if you can, you've probably got good data hygiene. Well, you have to be intellectually honest with yourself too. You can still answer a question, but I'm just saying that to me, that's kind of the North Star, right? Can you actually answer the most important questions? And for Sarah, it was, do we actually have a valid email to go reach out? And if you can't answer that question, well, that's a problem, right? And then that drives what quality means. So really good answers there. And I leave more knowledgeable, but probably more confused because it's a hard profession. And I think that's what's fun about it as well. We have 3 minutes. Camilla, do we even have time for another question, or should we not even attempt it?
Let's see. We can also post it in the events Slack channel and have you folks provide some answers there if you're up for it. Let's see here. I'm looking at the questions and they're really in depth. What challenges do you face with CRM process and upkeep? I know that's a big one, but it's one that a lot of RevOps folks face. So maybe we try to tackle that in the next 3 minutes.
Oh,
Uh,
I can
Like
go ahead.
I was just, like, we just make it really operational. Like we have a Jira board. We ask any of our requesters to put it through a board. It just stops that kind of noisy, trashy, like, can you go fix this immediately? And creates a little bit of an hour between you and the business requester in terms of like, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What does good look like? And then, I think we kind of keep it streamlined. So it's not actually a huge issue for us because we have a pretty good structure around it.
I'll answer very literally, like, what challenges do we run into? I can tell you the biggest challenge I've run into everywhere I've been and still struggle to solve, if I'm being totally honest, is the people building the process, and even more so the people making updates in the CRM often don't take the time and put in the effort to understand the business context that they're addressing. And that's the biggest challenge I've run into. And that's a gap that's like very, very hard to bridge, especially as your team grows and grows and grows. It's if you got the RevOps gal who's like your one person team. She's a Wonder Woman who does all the things. That's a lot different than a 200 person ops program where you're trying to bridge that gap with multiple separate teams.
Change management every time a new sales leader comes in.
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of it's one reason why I'm so happy that enablement was recently rolled into RevOps, because I think it's critical you don't build these processes and systems in a vacuum. But it's also really, really important that you enable people and, tell them the why, tell them the benefit, tell them why these things are so important. You can't just create a guide or a walkthrough and hope adoption happens, right? So I think that's so important. I feel very fortunate to have that on my team now. Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to adoption, which I think comes into buy-in and trust.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin, what you said, I completely agree. And I think you have to have alignment with your revenue leaders. Number one, any process you roll out needs to have that alignment, because if you don't have that alignment, then you don't have that empathy on what a seller or somebody that you're building this for goes through. And then, shameless plug, but I believe people live in Slack and Teams. And so I think giving nudges to the people where they live makes it easier. And I think if you can hit the easy button for your revenue teams, that's where you'll get more adoption on the process in general. Sorry, I had to end with that one.
No, that's a great point. I think we would all agree.
Big thank you to Rattle and all of our panelists. Thank you, thank you, thank you. For those who have attended, we will be sending out a link to the recording, and we will do our best to follow up with answers to all your questions. Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.